Story 1 Haunter. I like ghost Pokemon, and I remember the Haunter, Ghastly, and Jengar episode being the first one I saw. I loved their mischievous nature. If we're talking legendaries, I'd have to say Ho-Oh because of the big rainbow bird. Story 2. In the series, he learned to walk and speak like a human because of love. Everything went wrong, but he still found the best friends in Jesse and James, and they endure all of his strange shenanigans. Even to the point where James threw away his precious bottle cap collection to save Meowth from public humiliation. 4Kids made many changes to the series we saw on TV. The original Japanese ending is called Meowth's Song. It's a ballad where Meowth sings to the moon because it's shiny and round and lonely, and he wonders if there's another lonely being staring at the moon tonight so they too can be a little bit less lonely. In one of the CD dramas that came out with the series, Meowth makes a secret party for all of his friends, he buys cake and all of that. None of his friends showed up. That didn't sadden him, so he grabs his guitar and rocks the entire planet nevertheless. This is referenced in Meowth Trophy for Super Smash Bros. Melee, where Meowth is holding an electric guitar ready to rock. And finally, that one quote, we do have a lot in common. The same earth, the same hair, the same sky. Maybe if we started looking at what's same instead of always looking at what's different. Well, who knows? Oh, and I like cats. Meowth for the win. Story 3. I have one I haven't seen yet. Porygon. The idea of a Pokemon that was created from technology and can literally surf the web by entering cyberspace was really cool to me as a kid. Story 4. Flareon. I know it's not usually the favorite evolution and does not have the best stats, but it's a fire type, my favorite colors, and it's just a pretty Pokemon. I've made 3 different cosplays around it and am planning my 4th. Story 5. I never played Pokemon until I was a grown-up, but when I started playing, I got a Houndour that evolved into a Houndoom. I absolutely love the character design of Houndoom, and I kind of want one as a pet. Story 6. As an adult who can't draw to save his life, he was the easiest to draw. Plus, I loved his smirk. I work in education and mental health. One of my students at a high school I worked with gifted me a painting he made of Electrode when he saw me working on a styrofoam model of it in an art class we were in. Another student was inspired and gifted me a Voltorb she painted. I was so touched by their gesture, my attempt at art inspiring theirs, then them gifting it to me as a surprise, that I had their work framed and I keep it on my wall at home. Working the jobs I do is hard, but moments like that are what make it special. Story 7 Porygon Z because I was traded a 6'4", level 1 Porygon once in Wonder Trade, and I used it throughout the whole run. Dude is an absolute killer with its special attack. Story 8. Togekiss is cute and has a near-perfect set of, you don't get to play your own way tools to use. Par flinch, permanent critical hits, quite bulky, follow me access, good defensive typing. What else would you want? Story 9. If you think I am not asking my date their favorite Pokemon, you are clearly wrong. Personally, I am quite fond of Mimikyu, Tyranitar, and Minccino. Story 10. Squirtle. I don't know anything about Pokemon, but when I was 12, my family was about to move, and a younger girl gave me a Squirtle card. I thought it was sweet and kept it with me for years. It was in the late 1990s. Story 11. I would probably go with Alakazam. It is known for its incredible intelligence, and that psychic power seems pretty cool, definitely fitting for someone who enjoys thinking and learning. Story 12. Snorlax because A. He's adorable and B. No one expects you to have a strong normal-type Pokemon. The first thing I do in any battle is use 3 to 4 amnesias in a row. Then special attacks are virtually useless against him. He already has a ridiculous defense stat, so physical attacks against him already do minimal damage. Plus, I always make him hold a Rocky helmet, so any physical damage he receives inflicts roughly the same damage to the enemy. If his health gets lower than 50%, he uses rest and regains all his health. Then it's just a matter of using Body Slam until the enemy is defeated. I have a Snorlax tattoo. I love him so much. Story 13. Torchic was my first Pokemon. I started with Emerald on an emulator, and because of that I always pick Fire type. I never finished a game, but I'll never forget naming my first Torchic Flame as a little kid. Laughing my ass off. Story 14 Masquerain. I used to play the card game with my kids. I built a nearly unbeatable deck based around Masquerain. The kids would spend a lot of time working out ways to beat that deck. It was great fun for us all. Story 15. Snorlax. He gets to eat until he feels like he's full and then sleeps until he needs to eat again. Those are just the surface value reasons because he is a master powerhouse of a Pokémon who can learn almost any move. Story 16. Psyduck. They just have a great design and I love the little noise it makes. Golduck, on the other hand, looks kind of dumb. Also, I know like 0 Pokémon after the first generation or two. Story 17. It's usually a toss-up between Gengar and Shinx. When I was a young kid, I had one VHS 3 episode of the original Pokémon series. The first episode of them was Ash trying to beat Sabrina's Kadabra by going to get a ghost-type Pokémon. Gengar was so creepy and goofy, and I loved him. Then, when I played my first Pokémon Journey in Pokémon Platinum, not counting the Pokémon Stadium games or Pokémon Snap or any of those, Shinx was the first Pokémon I caught, and he was in my party all the way through to beating Cynthia. Story 18. Gengar, the first Pokémon I ever saw, is still my favorite. It's on the opening title screen of both the Red and Blue Game Boy games. Immediately after the Game Freak logo, a little animation of Gengar fighting either Nidorino or Jigglypuff appears. It's also used as the intro to the first episode of the television show. Story 19. Squirtle. I've always chosen it from the 3 starters in different games, also because of the last evolution form, Blastoise. A big turtle with cannons coming out of the shell. Hell yeah. Story 20. Mudkip. It was my first ever Pokémon. It's absolutely cute and inspired by axolotls that are native to my country. It's extremely useful and powerful too when it evolves. Story 21. Sizer. Before this current generation, my boy had 11 resistances, 1 weakness, access to Baton Pass, Swords Dance, Superpower, Roost, and Bullet Punch. He's so damn good he could easily compete in Ubers. Plus, Technician is a great ability for him. Story 22. Clefable. First Pokémon I trained to level 100, having caught it in yellow as a kid and later transferred to gold. Just a cheerful pink blob with Fire Punch, Thunder Punch, and Ice Punch, and Metronome. Found the idea hilarious. Story 23. Jigglypuff, because in the original television series, she sings and it makes everyone go to sleep. Then she gets mad and draws funny faces on them all with a black marker. At the time, it was cute and hilarious. Story 24. Gyarados starts off as a flailing, useless fish, only to then become one of the strongest and most impressive Pokémon out there. I always picture someone having a Magikarp pond, like a koi pond, and coming outside one day to see that one has evolved into the behemoth that is Gyarados. Magikarp and Gyarados also resonate with my personal life too. Story 25. Gengar. I could legitimately have one on me at all times like Ash's Pikachu, but you wouldn't even know because he's my shadow. I don't know, he's just really cool to me. Story 26. Every time I look at a Magmar, I see the pain in his eyes of always being paraded around, being forced to come out of that Pokeball, having to battle Charizard. You can tell Magmar just wants to chill. I am Magmar, we are all Magmar. Story 27. Psyduck has my heart forever. That poor little guy is just trying to get through life with a crippling headache and fear of what will happen if people stress him out too much. I see you. Story 28. Ambipom. I grew up watching the show when I was young and loved Apom so much. When I got my hands on Sun and Moon, I didn't play games much in my very young years. My ex hatched and trained a shiny Apom for me, had near-perfect stats and everything. I evolved him into Ambipom and absolutely dominated teams with him. I love my little monkey guy. Story 29. Lopunny. Homegirl is a bunny and just vibing. Incredibly cute if you put the ears in a hair tie as well. I know its reputation online, but I just really like its adorable booniness. The second and third are Sneasler and Salazzle. I want them to hang around our cosmetics and beautician store and just give some customers someone to vibe with while I have to focus. Story 30. I love Charmander. He was so sweet and cute in the show, but Articuno is my all-time favorite. I thought it was majestic and beautiful and always wanted one. Story 31. One of my all-time favorites is Sandshrew because that was the first and only Pokemon card I ever got. It's an adorable armadillo thing, and it's the best. That or Cub One, because I was a dinosaur kid and loved land before time, and Cub One is the most hardcore orphan baby dinosaur around. Story 32. Narrowing this answer to one is almost impossible at this point. I'll say Sableye because he's a creepy little gremlin who eats jewels. I love his little grabby hands and mischievous grin. Story 33. I'm a sucker for a fire starter, and I think dragons are cool. Yes, I know it's not a dragon type, but it's a winged lizard that breathes fire. What do you want from me? Story 34. Totodile. My first Pokemon ever when I got Pokemon Crystal for Christmas in 2000. I love his little smile and willingness to bite everything and everyone. Story 35. Mudkip. I have always loved the design, and I grew up alongside him to the point that friends think of me when they see anything that resembles one. On top of that, when it evolves, it gets one of the best type combinations ever and becomes a staple of rain teams, in my opinion. Mega Swampert with good stats and a good move pool. What's not to love about him? The shiny is gorgeous as well. Story 36. Umbreon is my favorite because it is like a gothic cat and from the best Pokemon concept they ever came up with. When I decided it was my favorite, it was quite an unusual choice. Everyone else would pick Charizard, Pikachu, or Mewtwo. But in the last 20 years, it seems Umbreon has overtaken Mewtwo in popularity and rivals the other two pretty well. It turns out my choice is not quite as much of a special snowflake as I thought it was. Story 37. Gengar with max speed. Sure, you can kill him with 2 hits, but knowing that I've knocked out one of your Pokemon weak to Ghost, then used Curse on your next healthy Pokemon, means he's going to be defeated too. Story 38. Sandshrew and Sandslash. I've always loved hedgehogs, and I accidentally caught a shiny one when I was younger. That's how I learned about shiny Pokemon. It was awesome. Story 39. Breloom has a great design, first instance of a grass fighting combo, decent in the competitive stage, lower tiers but still, and just a funky little guy. Story 40. I can't choose between my top 3. Aggron, the Iron T-Rex. Aerodactyl, the prehistoric flying menace. Haunter, just a great ghost with a simple design. Groudon is the best legendary, though. Story 41. Umbreon. I couldn't tell you why specifically, but it is my favorite across generations, and the generation it was introduced in is my favorite. Runner-up is the entire Cyndaquil line. Story 42. Infernape is hands down impressive. Give him fighter moves, and he'll confront any element any day. Water types, they don't matter if he moves first and punches the particles out of them. He decreases the humidity with every sound he makes. He doesn't care what you have. Rock? No. Plant? Ah, that one fire move is just for you. Sending them to Pokemon same-day shipping. Don't even try. He can take on literal deities, and once they're beaten, I'm capturing them. No mercy. He has no rivals left. He is the Wolverine of Pokemon. He can and will climb on your face and strike you with incredible force. I rest my case. Story 43. I can't pick just one. For years, it's rotated between Gengar, Lugia, and Tyrant Rum. Gengar because he was my champion on my team the first time I beat the Elite Four in Pokemon Red. Lugia looks cool and he just chills at the bottom of the sea and sings a cool song, and Tyrant Rum just because I like Tyrannosaurus. Story 44. Rayquaza. It is a giant green serpent dragon that eats meteorites and defends the Earth from aliens. How can you not like that? I also really like Deoxys. Such a cool design and idea for a Pokemon. Story 45. I love Vaporeons because they are squishy and soft. I would hug one every time I sleep because I am lonely. I would love it with everything I have, and I would protect it from all of the inappropriate individuals out there because I don't want it harming a human while trying to defend itself. Story 46. The Larvitar line is my favorite. It's like Godzilla. I also enjoy the Caterpie line. We called my son Big when he was little because he would inchworm his way around the crib. So I always associate Caterpie with him in my head. Story 47. Electivire. I love electric types in general and just how fun he is. Punchy electric dude with lots of move coverage leads to Electivire being a must-have for my team. Story 48. Gyarados and Alakazam were my favorites forever, and then Arcanine moved into the top 3. If I had to choose, I think I'd pick Gyarados because he could probably defeat Alakazam and Arcanine. Story 49. Aggron is what happens when you take things I think are cool and just combine them. A big bipedal dinosaur covered in metal that eats rocks and has a signature move that's just headbutting things. If that wasn't enough, it evolves into a mecha with extendable horns. So cool. Story 50. Cubone. There's something so endearing about its tough yet tragic backstory. The way it carries its mother's skull as a helmet and its bond with loss really adds depth to its character. Plus, it's a total fighter despite all it's been through. Always had a soft spot for this little bone warrior. Story 51. Mew and Mimikyu. Mew because it's a cute mutated fetus cat you had to go through so much effort back in the day to get. And Mimikyu because that creature was a beast when it was introduced and also cute. Story 52. Blastoise, Nidoking, Poliwrath, Magneton. Awesome offensive and defensive Pokémon who were underutilized in the anime, and because of that, they were never as popular. Outside of the first generation, give me Torkoal, Heracross, and Talonflame. Story 53. Gyarados. This is one of the most badass Pokémon, hands down. What makes it special is that it evolves from Magikarp, a Pokémon considered useless because it's a poor fighter, to put it mildly. If you bear with Magikarp, you get rewarded with a fearsome sea serpent which literally terrifies enemies. Story 54. When I played Ultra Sun, I didn't want to use the same Pokémon I did in my playthrough of Sun, so I randomly picked Pokémon I wouldn't usually choose. I stumbled upon a Grimer pretty early on, and it grew on me so much that it became my favorite Pokémon and Poison my favorite type.